All right, we have multiple major breaking news stories to walk through. Not only is Donald Trump officially set to federalize the Illinois National Guard and mobilize them all into Chicago against the explicit objection of Governor Pritzker, the people who live in Chicago right now, like me, I live and work in Chicago, and anybody with a rational brain. There are ways to fight crime that are more nuanced, that are more savvy through policy, not just mobilizing the military into every single blue city possible. But before we get there, before we get to the ultimatum that Governor Pritzker was given by the quote-unquote Department of War, I want to show you this story. Trump officials discussed sending elite army divisions to Portland, new text messages show. The same divisions that were trained for Afghanistan or Vietnam or Normandy, these other wars, were going to be sent into Portland. That is the 82nd Airborne Division. This is massively disrespectful to not only anybody who served, anybody who is serving, but anybody who lost their lives serving in this division. You're going to send it into Portland because Donald Trump saw Fox News play videos that, by the way, were 5 years old. If you guys saw my report the other day, Donald Trump is obsessed with Portland because Fox News has been rerunning footage from 2020 when there were actually protests and riots that did get out of control in Portland. Fox News has been replaying that over and over, and Trump is losing his mind over it. This reads, Trump officials discussed sending elite army division to Portland, text messages show. A high-ranking White House official was indiscreetly texting about the Portland, Oregon, planning last week, according to messages shared with the Minnesota Star Tribune. And it gets wild because Stephen Miller's advisor has text messages that we now have, and we learned about some of J.D. Vance's weird plans. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth considered sending an elite U.S. Army strike force to Portland, Oregon to quell protests. The messages, casually exchanged last weekend in a crowded public space, show high-level officials in the Trump admin discussing the deployment of the Army's 82nd Airborne, an infantry division that has been parachuted into combat zones in both wars, like Vietnam and Afghanistan. I can't help but laugh. Were they going to parachute into Portland just for the optics? At this point, that's what Chicago is. We have ICE agents on boats in the river. Literally ICE agents riding boats. Not even taking anyone, just riding boats. It's insane. They are taking people as well, but to continue, if the administration were to send in the Army division, it would almost certainly be challenged in court, as it always is. The Trump administration ordered National Guard troops to Portland. They're also going to federalize the National Guard. We'll get there in just 1 second. Anthony Salisbury, a deputy White House top policy advisor to Stephen Miller, sent the text over the private messaging app Signal while traveling in Minnesota and in clear view of others. Troubled by seeing sensitive military planning discussed so openly, a source contacted the Star Tribune and allowed a reporter to review images of the text. Over the course of the several conversations, totaling dozens of messages, Salisbury chatted candidly and at times profanely about a wide range of matters. Quote, between you and I think Pete just wants the top cover from the boss if anything goes sideways with the troops there. According to Weaver, Hegseth wanted Trump to expressly tell him to send troops into the American city. He acknowledged the potential ramifications. Quote, 82nd is like our top tier for abroad, so it will cause a lot of headlines. Probably why he wants POTUS to tell him to do it. Hegseth deployed 200 National Guard troops. The source shared the images on the condition of anonymity, but it seemed to be real. The individual confirmed Salisbury was the one sending the messages after reviewing photographs and a video of him. It gets even crazier because after they casually float the idea of deploying an actual Army division, the 82nd Airborne Division, into Portland to confront protesters, we then learn that VP J.D. Vance wanted to target multiple people who create content online for things they said about Charlie Kirk. So this says several exchanges include information that has since played out publicly, including a planned mass arrest of suspected Tren de Aragao gang members in Chicago. Salisbury wrote that Vice President J.D. Vance wanted to pursue criminal cases against 2 Florida influencers who were, quote, preaching violence on social media. The messages did not specify the identities of the pair and said prosecutors had declined one of the cases. And people are speculating that it is live streamer Destiny who quote tweeted it and said, absolute pussy bitch, because in the wake of the Charlie Kirk shooting, he was saying edgy things online. But this is another extension of the Trump admin making sure that everybody coalesces around them ideologically. Just think about the past few weeks. Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. We are all Jimmy Kimmel at this point. We all love Jimmy Kimmel. Comey got indicted at the behest of Donald Trump after he directly asked, J.D. Vance wants to go after people for saying mean things that he didn't like online. I mean, they're targeting people for saying mean things about them, for saying jokes, for not being ideologically pure enough. In a separate exchange, Salisbury then celebrated FBI Director Kash Patel's decision to fire several agents who were photographed kneeling during a 2020 protest. Another example, right here. People were kneeling 5 years ago and they just got fired from their jobs. You can fire people for that? That's absolutely absurd. I think that when Democrats get back into power, we should be investigating Tim Pool if they're going to investigate Destiny. We should investigate Benny Johnson, all of these people who were caught up in the Russia case. Quote, "This is how Kash survives," Salisbury wrote. "He will do this for the man, but day to day, giant douche canoe." They call him a douche canoe. Let's get to this Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker part because he said Trump is set to federalize the state's National Guard. I want to play for you this clip of him laying out the stakes earlier this morning.
Building tradesmen near Tribune Tower, simply doing their jobs, were detained by federal agents while working on a construction site.
Yep.
Separately, 24 federal agents chased down a man, handcuffed him, and asked him for his papers. Meanwhile, ICE's chief offender, Gregory Bovino, has been leading the disruption and causing mayhem while he gleefully poses for photo ops and TikTok videos. Bovino even admitted on the record that they are making arrests based on how you look. They're not targeting violent criminals or gang members. They're arresting tamale vendors and delivery men and shaking down families. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and Tom Homan said they were targeting the worst of the worst criminals. They lied, and they continue to lie. 60% of the individuals that ICE has taken in Illinois this year have no criminal convictions of any kind.
I made that exact same point about immigration in the insane MAGA debate that I released earlier this morning. The vast majority, the majority of immigrants that are being detained and deported haven't committed any crimes. These are people who are working and who just want a better life. It is sickening. And if you've watched the debate I posted this morning, bar fight, then comment yes or no. I'm curious how many of you have watched that yet. If you haven't watched my insane MAGA debate taking place in a bar where we're screaming at each other, go watch it. It's on my channel. It's fun and it's worth a watch.
ICE is running around the loop harassing people for not being white. Just a year ago, that was illegal in the United States. Now, ICE is making it commonplace. That's not making America great. In any other country, if federal agents fired upon journalists and protesters when unprovoked, what would we call it? If federal agents marched down busy streets, harassing civilians and demanding their papers, what would we say?
We would say it's fascism. They say they don't want to be compared to the Gestapo, and then they walk around in masks and grab people with no due process whatsoever. What else are we supposed to say? The White House and the Defense Department did not immediately respond to requests, but here's what's going on. The Defense Department, which we're going to call it the Defense Department, even though they want to call it the War Department, plans to federalize 300 members of the Illinois National Guard and deploy them within the state of Illinois. I just want you to imagine for a second if President Obama had posted a fake illustration of Chicago being invaded, because AI didn't exist then, just like Trump did. Trump posted an AI image of Chicago burning as a city under war with choppers. And he said, this is why we call it the Department of War. And then imagine if President Obama had federalized the National Guard to make sure that it was under his control against the explicit will of Republican governor. Like, could you just imagine if any of this happened under Obama? They would flip shit. We are going to continue to call out the brazen authoritarianism and break it down on a daily basis. If you appreciate this, make sure you drop a like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.